Well, when we start the film, Berk has become just overrun by dragons, and they're having, a wonderful symbiotic life with the humans of Berk, but there's just no room for anyone left. And Hiccup and Astrid and all the other dragon riders have taken on the charge to rescue dragons, and this is why they have so many dragons, because they've rescued so many and brought them back. I think that girls and boys alike love Astrid because of her spirit, her sort of warrior spirit. She's not hesitant about her skills and her power, and she just goes for whatever it is that she wants. And she's also, she's self-determined. She knows what she cares about, she knows what her strengths are, and she's unapologetic about them. And I think it's incredible for young girls and boys to see a female character like that in a film like this. The action sequences are incredible and so much fun, and just the amount of action that's going on at any one given time is overwhelming. To think that in the very first dragon movie, they couldn't put more than 8 dragons on the screen at one time. That was, I don't even know how many years ago that's what the technology allowed. And now there's one scene in the film where there are over 65,000 dragons that you're seeing at the same time. It's mind-blowing and stunning and beautiful. And the technology has grown so much since we started this trilogy that as the series has grown, everything's grown, and the capabilities to depict this world have grown, and it's just beautiful. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this part, but when we finally do see the hidden world, when we come into the ultimate dragon's nest, it's just jaw-dropping. Well, you see so many new dragons in this film. The most important one in this movie is the new Light Fury. It's a dragon that Grimmel has in captivity, and it's essentially a Night Fury, but it's a female, and she's all white instead of all black like Toothless. And she's really majestic and sort of this really magical creature. They all are, but there's something about her that's super ethereal, and I think the references for her and all the drawing and all the animation was, cat-like qualities, lion-like qualities, and that really comes through because she's so elegant. And you think Toothless is elegant until you put him next to her, and then he seems like a bull in a china shop. It changes everything when Toothless sees the Light Fury. His relationship, she's very wild and not domesticated at all. So she doesn't trust humans, and she doesn't trust Hiccup. And this world that Toothless has been tied to is so foreign to her, and she wants nothing to do with it. And so for Toothless to woo her and to be able to be with her, he has to come away from the safety of what he knows with Hiccup and the human world. And that means Hiccup has to let Toothless go, and he builds him a tail that allows him to fly on his own, which up until then, Toothless needed Hiccup to fly. And now Hiccup is allowing Toothless to fly without him, which is like the perfect metaphor for letting go of something you love to let it fly and be its full self. The core of the films have been love and all the ways that we love, and sacrifice, and what we're willing to sacrifice to give more dignity to others. And also it's been about facing fear and facing real darkness, real enemies, real hate, real threat. And those things are hard to talk about in the real world when we talk about them in the context of a world that we've created, it becomes so much simpler to reconnect to what's right and what's wrong, and what the right thing to do is, and that answer is almost always choosing love and choosing to be the best version of yourself, even when it's the hard thing to do.
Astrid has a soul, a warrior soul, that Hiccup just doesn't have. I mean, one of the endearing things about Hiccup is he's not the kind of leader that's going to stand up and grab a sword and braveheart me into battle. He's the kind of guy. He was a tinker. He thinks a lot. He doesn't have an alpha instinct really, and that's why he's got Toothless as his alpha. But his relationship with Astrid, she has the alpha spirit. And I think that she's very directed, she's very confident, she's very action-oriented. She sees clarity, I think, where Hiccup doesn't see clarity. So the transformation in this story is you're going from your best buddy, who is starting to take on a new life, and then you look around and realize, the strength that I've got is really, in this case, Astrid. Her first special ability is she's beautiful, and that gets Toothless right from the get-go. Of course, she's got this great ability that when she wants to, she can shoot out a fireball. She can fly through it, and when she flies through it, the scales of her skin heat up and become mirror-like, so she effectively disappears. It's a great metaphor in a relationship when sometimes you just want to disappear, right? You feel it's either awkward or you want to get out of the situation. She just go, boom, fly through it, out of here. So that's kind of a fun attribute of hers. But she represents the wild. She represents all those things that maybe Toothless never even really understood. One of the great challenges in a movie like this is if you had to sort of figure out what a mythical place on Earth would be for dragons, where would it be? And how might it exist? Because, we don't just come up with a magical idea. It's not a pure fantasy idea. It's an idea of like, how do we solve that problem? Where might it really happen? So certainly we put a little bit of fictional, theatrical thinking into it, but could it be possible that if there was an entryway to sort of the middle of the earth, above the magma layer where maybe the base of volcanoes, and there was a whole sort of atmosphere in there, might that be a place where humans couldn't find it, and there could be a whole ecosystem of plants and animals and bioluminescence where dragons could live and thrive? Who doesn't feel some sense of sadness when you say goodbye to a certain relationship or a certain situation? The trilogy has represented a really safe and secure, adventuresome place with characters we love, and we're sending characters on to a different life now. But it's the right thing to do. So I hope people come away and feel like, boy, I'm super sad about that, but I'm happy for what I know in my mind is happening next.
Berk is ruled over by the man that Hiccup has become and his partner in all things, Astrid. And it's a safe haven for dragons. They're still rescuing dragons all around the world until that peace is broken when Grimmel, who is I suppose the opposite of my character Valka, he wants to eradicate, he's a bounty hunter in a way, he wants to eradicate dragons from the face of the earth. And so Hiccup has to, along with Astrid, encourage and lead the people of Berk to go in search for the hidden world, to find sort of a permanent refuge for dragons. Well, Valka being Hiccup's mother, and they've been estranged for quite some time, which is what the second film dealt with, she's now, in a way, allowing him to become the man who he needs to be, in the way that you sort of do as a parent. You have to learn to let your children go. So she's become, in this film, a sort of a quiet confidant and moral compass, in a way, for Hiccup, and by default for Astrid too. Well, just as Hiccup is becoming a man, I mean, he started this trilogy as a boy, and he's now become a man. Astrid is also becoming a woman, and becoming a woman in a new world. And as they have fallen in love with one another, it's a really interesting relationship, quite a modern relationship, I think, in a true and wonderful sense, is they're absolute equals. They're competitors, they challenge one another, but they're also able to be gentle with one another and tell the truth to one another. And Astrid is, has abilities in her own right. And I think that's something that if any man can, Hiccup can respect. So it's a really dynamic, robust, modern, contemporary relationship, I think. Well, what I love about Valka is that she's fearless and courageous, but she's also quite fragile. You know, she only trusts a very few people, and so part of coming back into the community of Berk in the previous film was to open her heart again. And when you open your heart, you have to open yourself up to loss. And the film, in a lot of ways, you know, that's the bit of the family saga it really deals with. It deals with having to let go and accept that when you do that, you're going to lose something, but you also gain a lot. So I think she's quite a dynamic character. I love the fact that Stoick comes back, not only because he's a wonderful character, and I love the relationship between that strange little broken family that the Valka and Stoick and Hiccup represent, but also I think it's really important he's there because even if your parents pass away, die, whatever you say, you never lose their memory. You never lose their influence, good or bad. Things that they say to you in their, you know, when they come to you in your dreams or in your daydreams or nightmares, you know, they have a huge influence on who you become as a person as you mature. And certainly I know, having children myself and having, you know, moved from girlhood into womanhood, deeply into womanhood, I do think a lot about my parents. And things that they've said to me, and in a way forgive a lot more and have a greater sense of understanding. It's part of maturing, I think. So it's really important that paternal side of Hiccup's journey is revisited.
Things are going extremely well. They work hand in hand, the dragons and humans together. But I think they start to realize that the human world is not safe for the dragons, and they need to make some decisions and some choices, and that's what they do. What is Fishlegs' role? His role is to grow a gnarly mustache, which is incredible, which I'm going to try to do in real life. But he's like the kind of the scientist with the dragons. When everybody else was going out and fighting when they were young, he was always reading up on the dragons. So he's kind of the know-it-all. He's Hiccup's right-hand man. They're best friends in the beginning and the whole trilogy. But I think as people get older, you have to find your place in the world. And Toothless finds the Light Fury, which is a big deal for him because he's never been in love. You know, he's had a best friend, but he's never found love. So I think it's a growing path for both of them where Toothless needs to find his, part in the world. I think fans are drawn to the series because it's relatable. I think these dragons are like pets, and most people in the world have a dog or a cat. And I know for me, I saw a little bit of my dogs and all the dragons, especially Fishlegs, who has Meatlug, which is like my dog I've had for 4 years, a big boy, and then I just adopted a little puppy, which reminded me of the little Meatlug that he had. So I think people see themselves in the characters and their pets in the dragons.
I think Gobber's role, now that Stoick has moved on to Valhalla, I think that Gobber is more a kind of like friendly uncle / grandpa / idiot figure to Hiccup. I think Hiccup is as Hiccup becomes more adult, Gobber becomes more of a fool, I suppose. It happens as you get older. The people that you revered when you were young, you grow up and you realize they're kind of dumb. They don't know any better than you. They're just guessing. It's not like old people aren't smarter than you. They just have dry skin and have to go to the bathroom a lot. It is an epic tale, truly an epic tale, you know, from a young boy in a very classic sense, growing up and growing through all of these difficulties, you know, his father's passing and moving on and becoming an adult and becoming responsible himself, and it's a very classic adventure, and I think when these three movies slot neatly into history, they will be seen as that. They will be seen as, you know, a big rollicking story. Gobber began in the first movie with someone who loathed and feared dragons, and through the stories and through the adventures of the movies, became someone who not only accepted dragons, but came to love dragons. And I think that there may be some useful tips for all of us in there. I feel like when I began in the first movie, I didn't know how to work with dragons, but now I feel that dragons respect me and fear me.
So How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World picks up a year after the events of Dragon 2. Hiccup and Toothless are both chiefs of their respective tribes. They've been bringing dragons back to Berk. It's now overcrowded, it's unsustainable, and they really need another option. But when push comes to shove and a dark new threat in the form of Grimmel, the grizzly, threatens to trap Toothless and to take down everything that Hiccup loves, he convinces his fellow Vikings to take their dragons and everything they can carry in search of an old mariner's myth, of a hidden world beyond the edge of the earth. Should it exist, it could be the answer to all of their problems. But an elusive and wild female variation of Toothless' species creates complications, luring Toothless away and forcing Hiccup to really confront his own destiny. So, fighting together side by side, Hiccup and Toothless have to do everything they can to defend their way of life and to protect everything that they love. They are really fulfilling a dream of dragons and Vikings living together in peaceful harmony, defending those dragons that need their help from enemies and whisking them back to safety. Toothless has the same pressure to live up to in terms of the responsibility of being a chief. And yet they still find time to play with one another and you know, go flying together, and you know, it's still a boy and his dog relationship. Hiccup's real problem, and one that we address in this story, is that he is so reliant upon Toothless that Toothless has become his security blanket. And Hiccup's deep insecurity is that should he ever be stripped of Toothless, he would go back to that nuisance Viking of movie one, where he just couldn't do anything right. His every success is dependent upon Toothless. What he doesn't realize is that Astrid's been growing alongside him. She's been his stalwart companion and supporter through it all. And ultimately, she's the greatest resource and support that he has. Grimmel is cunning, and he is completely lacking in empathy. He dislikes humans, he dislikes dragons, he likes his own notoriety and fame, but that's about it. And he's a character who is conceived to be a strong nemesis for Hiccup, in that he's equally intelligent and is somebody who can meet Hiccup on an intellectual level and not just sort of a barbaric brute level. They need to go for broke in search of this hidden world, which is a mythical land his father talked about when Hiccup was just a boy. If it's true, if it exists, it could be a way of disappearing off the map, away from all of their enemies in this ever-shrinking world, and to find a utopia where they could continue their way of life with their dragons. It was a real challenge, actually, to try to get an image on screen that we all felt proud of, because we wanted it to feel very unique and like something completely new that we were presenting to our audience. So it's both a technical challenge, because there were so many dragons and so much light being channeled through difficult organic shapes like crystal, and also just the vast space. You know, it pushed our technology to the limits. Toothless having a girlfriend is a really fun concept for us from the start, because it means that he has to figure out how to be a dragon. If he is in fact the last of his kind, that means he probably grew up without the influence of other dragons around him. And he doesn't know how to flirt. He doesn't know how to go through these courtship rituals. And here we have the Light Fury, who's, you know, she's been around nothing but dragons, and she has no contact with humans. So she's very expectant of a certain decorum and a certain knowledge of how to go about these things. Only Toothless is a complete amateur. Worse, he relies upon Hiccup for advice on how to, you know, do the courtship ritual dances, for example. And it's a disaster, of course. He's a bumbling fool through his first date, and it only continues from there. But they're all tiny steps on the way to becoming a mature male dragon who knows what to do in these situations.
There's something about playing villains that I relish, and I think any actor has to say the same thing. If you had a choice of playing Mephistopheles or Faust, I think you're gonna go with Mephistopheles because it's so much fun. The thing that Grimmel has is a great passion, which makes him attractive. But it's misguided passion. He believes that the world is made for only one kind of people. And of course, he's full of beans. Wait till you see the hidden world. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like a dragon heaven. If you ever have a chance to work for these guys, you better do it, because they're the real deal. They're the real McCoy. They care more than I can tell you. We worked on this. They offered me the job. I was delighted. I took it, and that was the first session. I didn't know there were going to be 5 more sessions, because they want to refine and change and tweak, but they're always very positive, and they care so much. It's not just a job. I think it's okay to be carried away, and it comes through in the film, because passion is the underlying quality of this piece of work.
F. Murray Abrahams, who plays Grimmel, who is after the Night Furies. He wants all dragons dead, basically, and a rather simplistic view, but from a very creative, ingenious, and dangerous man, and therefore he comes after Berk and the Vikings and the dragons, and so it becomes a whole different experience. And in the middle of this, of course, Hiccup is also learning how to be a man, how to rule, as we do in life, from his own perspective, and learn to kind of bang to the beat of his own drum and lead people, and suddenly have to deal with politics and opinions and characters and challenges, and their place is attacked, and he has to make a decision to move somewhere else. And for him, he always wanted to go because he was inspired by his father as a kid and finding the hidden world, and it's his belief that if the Vikings could get to the hidden world, they truly could live harmoniously as one with the dragons. For Stoick, he always understood the importance of that place. It's kind of in terms of Viking culture, Viking myth, and Viking truth, that one day he would have to go there to discover this place. And they have different understandings of what that means, though, because Stoick thought that he would have to go there to close it off, because at that point, man and dragons would not have to fight anymore. And with a new kind of tolerant understanding in the world that we live in, and now that they're friends, Hiccup has thought it's his destiny to go there to live with the dragons. And then we come to see in the story that it's actually neither of those things. I feel like it's where you get to truly go and experience such a fantastical world. But more importantly than that is the fact that you can travel so far and yet feel so connected because they tell stories that we can all connect with.
Hiccup's kind of spinning plates. He's trying to be chief. He's trying to be a potential husband to Astrid. He's trying to be whatever he is to Toothless. And then, of course, when Toothless meets the Light Fury, Hiccup is kind of forced into being not the only show in town. And there's a big transition coming. The big sort of elephant in the room is. We fought so hard to bring dragons here and to live alongside them. Is this actually what's best for them? Hiccup and the Vikings all realize that their home is not a piece of soil. Their home is them. And wherever, as long as they're together, Berk will be wherever they are. And so they're forced to leave their island and start anew. And they basically start this colony, effectively, that is a continuation of the old Berk. But it's all the same people, it's all the same energy and songs and traditions, just in a slightly new context, and it's proof positive that that home is where the heart is. Astrid is as tough a Viking as can be found on Berk, and I think she is true to herself and strong and stands up for herself and is fiercely loyal. And I think that she's a proud woman, and I think that she a lot of young girls can take a look at Astrid and be like, you know what, I don't need to try and beat someone else at anyone's game. I'll just play my game, and if you get it or you don't, that's your problem. But she's true to herself, and she's strong, and she's fierce, and she's definitely Hiccup's hero for sure. There's a part of Toothless that Hiccup can never fulfill, and of course then we meet the Light Fury, and like I said, we get to see what it looks like when Toothless flirts. And it's this sort of like, every parent has to go through that period when their kid eventually starts, looking at other kids, and getting crushes and all that stuff. And the priorities aren't just, carrot sticks and homework. And so I think you see them just growing up, basically. This is all just a roundabout way of, Toothless has not plateaued. He's growing up just as much as anyone else in the movie. Toothless tries to woo the Night Fury. Toothless tries to woo the Light Fury by he does this awkward little kind of dance. He tries to draw for her. He really makes a bit of an ass of himself. And Hiccup has to just watch helpless as Toothless embarrasses himself and ends up inadvertently chasing the Light Fury away. And it's he's just awkward and gushy and overeager, much like Hiccup. This movie is about Hiccup really growing into adulthood and becoming his father in a lot of ways, or his version of his father. Like I said, he inherits the mantle of chief. He is forced into making big, tough decisions with the future of Berk on the line, and so I don't know that he could do that without a sort of his father's voice, hearing his father's voice or feeling his father's spirit, and so he has these sort of lovely dreams, these sort of flashbacks where his father bestows bits of wisdom that will help steer Hiccup on the right course. And so even if his father is not with him anymore, in that, he died in the second movie, he's still around in a big way. And all of Hiccup's life, he has been contending with his father's legacy. And I think this is the part of the story where he embraces it. I'm very proud that we have consistently embraced and hammered home a message for square pegs everywhere. That just because stuff has been a certain way doesn't mean that that's how it has to be, and that just because you aren't like everyone else doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer. And I think that there's a lot of kids out there who are maybe wired differently than the average classmate, and I think that, as I was, and I think that having characters like Hiccup and Astrid are important to show you that what makes you different isn't a failing, but a virtue.
In the third movie, in Hidden World, we find Hiccup and Astrid are rulers of Berk, and everything is a sort of utopia. They've created a dragon utopia in Berk. During this movie, they discover a new world of dragons, a hidden world of dragons they didn't know existed before, and they go in search of it and they discover it. And along the way, they face some pretty existential threats. There's some massive battle scenes, and on top of all of that, our main star, Toothless, finds himself a girlfriend. They've all evolved, they've all grown up, and I think that's one of the great things about getting to do a trilogy of movies, is that as our protagonists grow up, so do our audience, and it appeals to a younger audience still, but all those people who saw that first film and grew up with the first film now grow up with the characters. So they're young people now, they're not children, they're young people. Hidden World is a hidden world of dragons. There's a scene in the film where there's over 65,000 dragons in this one scene, which, if you think about that, filling your screen is going to be pretty impressive. And that's what Hiccup and Toothless are off to find. Dean's the daddy of all of this. Like, he came up with it. He's the genius behind it all, and he's so passionate about it. He loves it so much. He knows this world. Maybe more than I've ever known anyone know anything about the thing they write. He's got a wicked sense of humour. He's a very, very lovely and generous guy. And he's a brilliant director. He's always got something he wants you to try differently, some different route into the scene, some different idea. He's brilliant comically directing you. I think he's wonderful. I'd love to work with him again.